Zelda. It's one of Nintendo's most prolific franchises. You got your Mario, and you got your Zelda.
Shout out to Dave Klein.
Boom! That's a Nintendo. I mean, if you walk up to some rando on the street and ask them, do you know a tingle? They're gonna say yes, because he was on America's Most Wanted last week. But did you know at one point, Zelda was on the brink of failure? This is the story of how the Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess saved the Zelda franchise. When Shigeru Miyamoto hit the mean streets of Nintendo back in 1977, he quickly rose to eternal stardom after creating Donkey Kong out of unsold arcade machines of Radar Scope in 1981. Then came the Famicom/NES in the West.
Absolutely goated. Absolutely goated.
With the Japanese release of the Famicom, Miyamoto worked on two games that would come to define Nintendo.
Saved video
Devil World
games.
and Excitebike. But afterwards, he would simultaneously work on two little games at the same time. Super Mario Bros. Released in 1985.
Low-key, Shigeru Miyamoto and Nintendo save video games. Obviously, if you know, you know. But if you don't know, like, yeah, they pretty much save video games. Nintendo saved video games because people weren't really buying them at the time or something like that, especially in America. And it was like the Atari and stuff was out. But it was just tanking. And then they came out and it was just a wrap. They saved us.
And The Legend of Zelda, released in 1986. Again, he worked on these at the same time, which is insane to me. These two games were mega successes for Nintendo. Super Mario Bros. Sold around 3 million copies within 4 months in Japan alone.
In 4 months,
and became
fam.
a system seller and a huge reason the NES succeeded in the West. Meanwhile, The Legend of Zelda sold 1 million units on its first day in Japan alone. And afterwards, these two games would become Nintendo's pair of golden geese, laying critically acclaimed system sellers one after another. In fact, we have a whole video about Zelda's games in our excellently written History of Zelda video by Lucy James. So,
we're watching
fast
that one
forward to this. You got your Mario 64.
Your Mario.
You got your Zelda Ocarina of Time. These two games defined and set the stage for 3D games to come in all of gaming. While Zelda was, back and forth, one of Nintendo's largest properties, Ocarina of Time absolutely blew the other games out of the water as the 4th best-selling game of all time on the N64 with 7.6 million copies sold. We're talking about a game that wasn't only fantastic as one of the few 10 out of 10 meme games of all time, but a trendsetter. Ocarina of Time's lock-on Z targeting is still used to this day. It defined and still continues to define how to handle action in a 3D space.
And they continue to do
Mask,
so.
in our opinion, was weird as f. And seriously, one of my favorite
like why did
games. So, the stage and hype was set for Nintendo's next system, the Nintendo GameCube. Everybody, and I mean everybody, was looking forward to what new Mario game was coming and what new Zelda game was coming. Then, Space World 2000.
The Space World 2000 demo.
This was what Western consumers were looking for. A brand new, super mature Zelda with ultra realistic graphics.
At least realistic compared to, you know, this.
But the thing is, while Western audiences loved it, Eiji Aonuma hated it.
Manley Reviews of Manley Reviews? What are you doing here?
Oh, I have a green screen. Nothing's real.
By the way, Manley did an amazing video on the same topic, and if you haven't seen it, you should. So, Eiji Aonuma took one look at the sick battle between Link and Ganondorf and said, nah, this isn't Zelda. This isn't Zelda at all.
And instead of this, he gave us this.
The Wind Waker.
There's a long-running perception that this was Miyamoto's favorite version of Link, as he always wanted Zelda to be a cartoon. That's a lie. Miyamoto hated Toon Link. When he had to
Cat.
present the game against his will, he told Aonuma that it wasn't too late to make the graphics realistic.
Regardless of if you think the game's amazing or not, which it was by the way, reception in the West, not so good.
It's a
After
fact,
witnessing
though.
the cool, more mature
We
version
never
of the
really
Hero of
were,
Time,
like-
Western audiences were not stoked when they instead saw this leapfrog version of Link that looked like he belonged in Coco Melon.
Me included.
This is a disgrace to the Zelda franchise.
I wanted mature and I got 5-year-old.
Why?
This is disgusting. I have never seen a game
It takes me
off
off that they have to
I
make
think
it so
Nintendo just ruined
kiddie.
the town.
I just hope this is a cruel joke.
But it doesn't matter what I think. What matters is what Nintendo thought. Even
Honestly, at that time too, the thing was everything was changing to be more mature rated. Like in terms of games and stuff like that, Halo was coming out. Like Halo was out, I think already at the time that this was coming out, that Wind Waker was coming out. It was in full swing. Call of Duty was in full swing. A lot of those kind of games were already ready. The FPS genre was taking over. So everybody kind of labeled Nintendo as the kiddie platform, like the kid game thing, or like the family platform. And it was like that console wars were always like Xbox versus PlayStation, because PlayStation and Xbox had those kind of games. And that's why the 360 war and stuff happened. But the Wii kind of just blew that out the water, just based off what it was as a console kind of thing, right? But everything at that time was about being mature. Like even the clothes, the music. I'm telling you, like 50 Cent was in the era. Like this is in the club, everybody was rocking sagging jeans, like crazy. Man's had Nelly was out, tattoo bandana on the face, like, or band-aid on the face. Like this was this kind of time, you know what I mean? So it's just like it wasn't as cool to see what Toon Link was. And like speaking of Toon Link, like I have him right here too, you know what I mean, as one of the favorites. Like, but it's just crazy at the time. Even I said like, yo, this is kind of whack.
Even though the GameCube itself underperformed,
And then you played the game and
according to
you're like,
Eiji
"Yeah."
Aonuma, Zelda's numbers were incredibly disappointing in Japan, while the new direction hadn't appealed to as many people in the West, which was now becoming a market Zelda would rely upon. So the team thought about what the issue was and decided it was innovation. Sure. Okay. Clearly, if they made an innovative Zelda game with a brand new style of gameplay, they'd be able to reel back in Japanese players.
So the solution was clear.
2 motherfucking consoles, baby.
What? That's a terrible idea.
The game was Four Swords Adventures, a follow-up to an offshoot game bundled with The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past GBA port. And,
It looked like it was gonna
whereas
be
that
sick, though, I'm not
play
gonna
its
hold you.
main multiplayer feature was own a GameCube and 1 Game Boy Advance per player, as each one would serve as a controller. Yeah, it didn't do well. I mean, look, the scores were fine, but in terms of sales, we're talking less than 400,000 copies sold for a Legend of Zelda game. Less than 400,000. Later that year, Capcom released The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap, a more traditional Zelda adventure that sold pretty well at 1.76 million copies, but really not much better than Metroid Fusion, which sold 1.6 million copies. And I'm sure you all know how rarely Metroid games have released since Metroid Fusion and Prime 3. So the
Yeah.
question is, was Zelda on the same downward trajectory as Metroid?
Dread and then
Pokemon,
Prime.
Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, Mario,
Double
and
Dash.
now even sometimes Kirby were starting to outsell the Zelda games. Was Zelda no longer Nintendo's golden goose?
So Eiji Aonuma decided to swallow his pride and...
Wind Waker 2, baby.
What? No, not at all. Why would you think that? Eiji Aonuma decided to shake things up. He went back to the realistic graphics from the original GameCube presentation, but on a horse.
Behind the scenes, Aonuma knew they needed to try the more mature-looking Link to relate to an older teen Western demographic.
Facts.
And Miyamoto didn't feel like that was enough of a change for a new Zelda. He told the team they should focus on horseback riding. So, 4 months later, the team had a very basic prototype of horseback riding working and dropped a surprise trailer at E3 2004, which garnered the prior reaction.
When he came through.
And it was announced for fall of the following year.
But there was one problem. There was no game. Notice how the trailer has no subtitle, it's just The Legend of Zelda.
So, it was time to hunker down and decide what the hell this game was gonna be. On the positive front, that standing ovation and incredible reaction to the trailer served as a huge motivation for the team as they were excited by the overwhelming response. However, they had to come up with something new, so the team thought about how prior Zelda games had alternate worlds, Light and Dark and Link to the Past, Past and Future and Ocarina, and decided to use this as motivation. What if they took Link as a rabbit from the Dark World and Link to the Past, but made it cool? What if they made Link a motherfucking wolf?
Miyamoto wasn't confident with the direction, or at the very least, he didn't think creating a four-legged creature would work convincingly enough.
Either way, inspired by Minish Cap, which was also then in development, using a similar mechanic with its big and small worlds, Eiji Aonuma and the Zelda team forged forwards. E3 2005 came, a brand new trailer, and they decided on a title, Zelda TP. Toilet paper.
Come on now. Twilight Princess.
But by E3 2005, just months before the planned launch date, Aonuma wasn't happy with the gameplay innovations, and they still needed something major. Sure, fans were waiting 3 hours in line to play it at E3, but to Aonuma, the game wasn't unique or good enough. Luckily, behind the scenes, Nintendo was working on something huge. Something revolutionary. The Nintendo Revolution, later known as the Nintendo Wii, and Miyamoto approached Aonuma about utilizing the new motion controller for Zelda. He thought this would be the perfect innovation to make Twilight Princess stand out and unique from the previous entries. Then, Satoru Iwata wanted to push the game back to ensure it was a masterpiece and told the team to make something that was 120% Zelda. Whatever that means.
And it worked.
Decided to push back Twilight Princess's release date
Man
by
has
a year
pulled
to
back
make
the
game
games
available
like
for
so
both
many times and
Nintendo
it's
Wii's
worked
launch
every
title
time.
and available for the GameCube at the same time.
Every single time.
And the team got to work, incorporating their game into the Nintendo Wii, which they felt would help in the Japanese market especially. First, they used the remote, which could point at the screen, for shooting Link's bow. Next, they made it so Link would swing his sword when players swung the remote. Because most players are right-handed, they flipped the entire game and mirrored it on the Wii, so Link, who's usually left-handed, would be right-handed. And the Nintendo Wii launch came. So, fall 2006, there I was, little Dave waiting outside of my local game store overnight for my copy of a Nintendo Wii and The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. And so too were 3 out of every 4 people waiting in line for a Wii. In fact, 87% of people who purchased the Nintendo Wii at launch also purchased The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. It went on to be so successful that it became the best-selling Zelda title in the series until Breath of the Wild, even outselling Ocarina of Time. Whereas Ocarina of Time sold 7.6 million copies, Twilight Princess sold 8.85 million copies. And for Eiji Aonuma, it was a personal success, as it was the first game he'd ever made that his wife both wanted to play and finished, which she did with their son. Hey Marissa, will you play Twilight Princess with me?
No.
Yikes. But yo, I remember me personally, this is my last pause, obviously, because it's just like videos about that. But I remember going to Best Buy, waiting with my sister and my dad, like early in the morning, bro. I'm talking about like 4 or 5 a.m. or whatever at Best Buy, and there's already a lineup there. But we were maybe like 40th or something in line. Like maybe a little bit more, like 40th or 50th. And they came out and they gave everybody like a piece of paper that had a number on it, so you could just like disperse from the line at some point, because the line started wrapping and they only had so many consoles, and they were just like, yo, this is like how much you get. They gave out a shirt that had the Wii, like I had a Wii shirt and everything, like that's probably somewhere in my closet right now. And it was so dope, the fact that like my dad was like cool, like he was hype for us, you know what I mean, to go get this console at like, obviously it was past midnight, but basically like a midnight release kind of situation, early in the morning on like a weekday or something too. I feel like I don't even know what day it released, like if like week of the week, but I feel like it was a weekday, and he was supposed to go to work or something like that, and he just didn't for us. It was that lit. And we got a Wii, we got Twilight Princess, me and my sisters and I, and like we all got our own Wiimotes and everything like that. It's crazy.
But
I didn't feel the
going
pain like
back
this
to
guy.
the sales, you can see just how stark of a contrast Twilight Princess was for the team. While it still didn't sell as well as Mario Kart, Mario, or Smash, it was still the highest selling Zelda game ever, and solidified once again that Zelda was a franchise worth putting the time and money into. It's easy to think Nintendo can do
As
whatever
usual.
they want, especially with a franchise as popular as Zelda. But I want to take a look at a quote from then president of Nintendo, Satoru Iwata. In a conversation with Shigeru Miyamoto and Eiji Aonuma upon finishing Twilight Princess, Satoru Iwata says, and I quote, "Even with all the resources we have here at Nintendo, we could only make something like this once every few years.
Goated, man.
In fact, it might not be easy to do something like this again, so I really want everyone to have a wonderful time playing this game." But after the success of Twilight Princess, the next major game in the franchise, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, went on to receive a 5-year development time and an irregularly high budget from Nintendo.
And it
I
was
don't
fire.
think Zelda would have completely died if Twilight Princess wasn't successful. But like Metroid, F-Zero, and Pikmin, I do think the trajectory of the series would
Pikmin?
have changed, and we would have perhaps seen fewer Zeldas,
What?
or less time and budget allotted to future games. And who knows, without it, we might have never gotten Skyward Sword as we did, or more importantly, the team may have never gotten the chance and time to make Breath of the Wild. Today, Zelda is bigger than ever, and that's all thanks to The Legend of Zelda toilet paper. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, a huge thank you to Manley Reviews for coming on this episode. I highly
Honestly,
highly
Twilight Princess
recommend
is
his own video on
stupid
Twilight
goated.
Princess, as I really personally love it.
And it's just
his
the fact that,
presentation
like,
style is
it almost like it
I
happened
know
to
I'm
them
one
a
of the
couple
few
of
people who
times,
do
right?
this,
Obviously,
but I'd
like,
actually rather replay Twilight Princess than Ocarina of Time. And look,
sure, I guess. But like Majora's Mask was the first one that like did that, where people were like, "Yo, this isn't it," but it was like still kind of it because it followed Ocarina of Time so closely. But like in terms of graphics and style and stuff like that, but the time loop, everybody hated it. But other than that, you know, dope video, bro.